We're going to start with a little something that we prepared. If we can dim the lights, please.
For over 20 years, Israelis and Palestinians have been trying to make peace by way of separation. Us here and them there. A divorce. But separation to two states has not worked. Both Israelis and Palestinians are deeply connected to all the land. Jews call it Israel, and Arabs call it Palestine. Most of the holiest sites for the Jews are in the West Bank. This is why hundreds of thousands of settlers have been attracted to there. At the same time, the Palestinian refugees from 1948 are connected to the villages and towns of their homeland that existed, and some still exist, within Israel. For years, we have been ignoring the attachment that both peoples have to the entire land. This is why we have been focusing on separation. The West Bank was carved into areas A, B, and C. A separation barrier was erected, settlements were uprooted. Separation was highly divisive for Israelis and came at a very high price for Palestinians. It is quite clear that there are two national movements deeply rooted in the same territory. After 20 years of failed attempts at partition, it is time to accept reality. As the two territories are so deeply entangled, it should really come as no surprise that separation has failed. We need to take a different approach and speak of two states in one space, an Israeli-Palestinian union. Two states, because just like Israelis need a nation-state with a flag, a parliament, and a national anthem, so do the Palestinians, a flag, a parliament, an anthem. Different approach and speak of two states in one space. They too have been struggling for independence for over a century, and it is clear that sooner or later a Palestinian state will be established on 22% of historical Palestine. But roads, railways, water, and energy infrastructure can be shared. It is even economical, and in certain respects it has been happening for years. In fact, Israelis and Palestinians already share a currency. Most importantly, Israelis and Palestinians will enjoy freedom of movement and access throughout the land. The principle of freedom of movement and access will enable settlers to avoid eviction and remain in Palestine as residents of Palestine and citizens of Israel. Likewise, Israel will accept refugees as residents of Israel, but voting citizens of Palestine. Is this far-fetched? Is it impossible to imagine, some years down the road, Israelis and Palestinians moving freely throughout both countries? Like in Europe, we should consider developing cooperation between Israel and Palestine in the fields of governance, security, infrastructure, and economy, so that one day in the future we will see the establishment of an Israeli-Palestinian Union. During this past year, IPCRI, together with a group of Palestinians and Israelis, has researched and developed this framework. We invite you to read our report and decide for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. That work was done by Ido Amin sitting here, and we have a Arabic and Hebrew version that are hopefully going to go viral. It is with a great honor, pride, and quite a bit of excitement that I sit here before you today at the end of our Two States in One Space project. Today marks a milestone in a journey that started nearly 5 years ago when I woke up one day and came to the conclusion that Israel and Palestine can no longer be separated as per the Oslo Accord. The journey led me to begin a deep introspection and questioning of positions I held since my teens, a reaching out to who I had considered for many years as the nemesis, settlers, and crossing that chasm. Getting to know, listen, hear, identify, and have compassion for the desires of Palestinians and Israelis living throughout the Holy Land. From there to the co-directorship of IPCRI 3 years ago, to initiating and then directing this project, and to this very moment. Though it turns out that Albert Einstein probably did not wittingly define insanity as doing something over and over again and expecting a different outcome, the perceptiveness of this observation rings loud no matter who said it, and it seems like a good way of explaining what Israelis and Palestinians, with the active and sometimes aggressive help of the international community, have been trying to do for over 20 years. Time and time again, Israeli and Palestinian leadership have been forced to negotiate over the same general plan, and time again, they have failed to reach a positive conclusion. The key recurring failure is the aversion to deal with all the most contentious issues at the heart of this conflict. Something I hope you will see we take head on. As a retired lawyer, I find it incredible that Rule 101 of negotiations, being to deal with the hardest issues first, was ignored by so many experienced people so many times. The fact of the matter is that from Oslo, the parties actually never agreed between them on a common vision. There was never agreement on what the end game is, and thus, there should be no surprise that no end game was actually reached. If failing only meant going back to the starting point, we could probably keep at this ritual of talking about talking, then talking, not agreeing on anything, and then the talks breaking down for another century. However, as we all know, this is far from reality. As Hanan Ashrawi put it, in this part of the world, if we don't move forwards, we move backwards. Today, more than ever, we see that we, Israelis and Palestinians, are not stuck. There is no status quo. There is a dangerous, violent, steep and slippery slope on which we are together sliding into bloodshed, sorrow, death, and more hate. No human can agree to this. No person living here should. And yet, if on the one hand, we have a very problematic conduct that is clearly leading nowhere, and on the other, giving up cannot be an option, as it dooms Israelis and Palestinians to a very violent and hopeless reality, though it does seem to be the only vision some of the leaders locating no more than 10 kilometers away from here have, then what can we do? Well, one thing we can do, and I suggest humbly we did indeed do in this group, is to think out of the box, to innovate, to re-examine, to question everything, to take everything apart, back to its very basic, shift it all around, and see if perhaps we can put the pieces together again in a different, more successful way. This is what is done in the business world when faced with a business problem, and this is, we hope, exactly what we did over the past year. The basis of the research we will present to you is a paradigm shift. A shift from the classic two-state solution, which has become synonymous with separation that entails two separate and separated states with walls, fences, evictions, restrictions, and denials of rights and of attachments. This has been called by Israeli politicians from the center and from the left as the us here and them there plan, or as Yair Lapid put it, a divorce from the Palestinians. A plan that requires the removal of a minimum of 130,000 settlers, 15 times the Gaza disengagement, many of whom, regardless of the legal aspects of their presence on the land, have been living there for over 40 years. And on the Palestinian side, virtually zero return of Palestinian refugees, many of whom have been living in squalid conditions in refugee camps around the region for up to 70 years, regardless of the politicization of their plight. It should be no surprise to anyone who knows anything about this region, its history, its issues, and its people, that this is a very difficult, or should we say impossible, sale to make. Thus, we propose to shift the paradigm to that of two sovereign nation states that offer full freedom of movement and access between them, an Israeli-Palestinian union. We set out this research project 11 months ago with 5 underlying principles we believe are agreed to by a vast majority of Palestinians and Israelis, and upon which we started our investigation. 1. Israelis and Palestinians are both deeply connected to all of historical Palestine or Eretz Israel. 2. Jews and Arabs live side by side or mixed in this land. 1.5 million Palestinians in sovereign Israel. 300,000 Palestinians in Israeli-controlled Jerusalem. 350,000 Jews in the occupied West Bank. 3. Arabs and Jews, Israelis and Palestinians have been involved in what has been a national struggle for over a century. This struggle has had in the past and is currently gaining religious, dangerous characteristics. 4. Over 90% of the holiest sites of the Jewish people are located in the West Bank, what Jews call Judea and Samaria. From the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron in the south, through Rachel's tomb in Bethlehem, the Old City, of course, in Jerusalem, Shiloh, Bethel, up to Joseph's tomb in Nablus. And 5, 100% of the original Palestinian refugees come from cities, towns, and villages that are today, whether still existing or not, within what is internationally recognized Israel within the 1967 borders. The research project we present for you today is actually revolutionary in its conceptual simplicity. It is still very much a two-state solution. It will see 2 sovereign national states between the sea and the Jordan River. Israel on 78% of the land and Palestine on 22%. This has been agreed to already. However, it also recognizes the strong connection of both peoples to all the land, as well as to Jerusalem. And therefore, it ensures that all people will have freedom of movement and access, and eventually even the right to live anywhere in the land. And so as to maintain the national identity of each of the countries, Israel and Palestine, something which is clearly of great importance, as we see during these very days with the debate over the nation law, the union will allow for a division between residency and citizenship. Residency relating to where the citizen of Israel or Palestine is actually living, and citizenship relating to the national citizenship regardless of where he or she lives. Much more about the aspects of governance, return and immigration, Jerusalem and security in the first panel we will have, where the heads of the working groups will present their findings right after this panel. This project is unique not only in its approach and innovation. It is blessed by the fact that in parallel and in close cooperation with it, there are 2 national groups that make up one grassroots political movement called 2 States, One Homeland, that is pursuing the same vision. We are very grateful for this cooperation and hopeful, and particularly for the presence of nearly 20 Palestinian members of the Palestinian group led by Mr. Auni El-Mashni, who is here with us, and many members of the Israeli group led by Meron Rapaport. We will shortly hear from them both. The fact that a research project conducted by a think tank has a practical arm that can immediately put to use the fruit of this research makes us extremely hopeful that the research we present today will not end up as a dust catcher on shelves. There is no question that skepticism and pessimism as to the prospects of an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement is rampant. Somebody said to me this morning, it's science fiction. However, one common aspect of all those sitting here and involved in this initiative, whether the research project or the political one, is the reaction of people. Over the past years, since this idea started brewing within me and others, time and time again, a common reaction we received was, interesting, let me think about it. As someone who came to the political maturity in the Israeli left, I was used to a very different, mostly disrespectful response to my long-held beliefs. However, within Israel's current political landscape, it is impossible to place on the political spectrum an initiative that both does not support and is even against uprooting of settlements, and on the other hand is in favor of the Palestinian right of return. It is neither right or left, or perhaps it is both. It turns a de facto, very troubling and wrong situation of occupation into a de jure situation of nationhood, cooperation, and interdependence that can be accepted. It creates a cognitive dissonance, which social psychologists tell us can be used for conceptual or behavioral change. I've taken this reaction to be a very positive indication of the idea's efficacy. The book you all have will be, in the coming days, delivered to members of Knesset, members of the Palestinian Legislative Council, members of the PLO Executive Committee, the Fatah Central Committee, the diplomatic community in Israel and Palestine, to business leaders on both sides, and to many more. We are going to be pushing the video you just saw in 3 languages across the net and need your help with that. We cannot sit on the sidelines. We have members of Israeli, Palestinian, and international press here who we hope will carry the message that there is a viable, implementable, and worthy alternative to the classic 2 states, no solution. And there is still hope that there is a dedicated group of Israelis and Palestinians who agree to this common vision, that have been meeting for nearly 2 years and intend to make this plan known, considered, discussed, and adopted. There are a great number of people and bodies to thank concerning this project, and I will quickly run by as many as I can. First, an important credit omission, which I hope is being taped. Ronen Idelman is responsible for the cover of this book, and Dimi Reider, Nabil Armeli, and Rechavia Berman for the translation of Arabic and Hebrew. It's my fault as editor that their names are not in the book, and I apologize for that. The heads of the research groups, Dr. Chaim Yacobi, my partner Riman Barakat, Dr. Yael Barda, Huda Abu Arkub, Noah Levi, Ofer Shinar, Tamar Luster, Dr. Muhammad Arikat, Dr. Benedetta Berti. A special thanks to the INSS, the Institute for National Strategic Studies, and Brigadier General retired Udi Dekel, who will be here later, who accepted the challenge and took up the security group. The steering committee, Auni El-Mashni, Meron Rapaport, Munir Abushi, Professor Oren Iftachel, Dr. Dalia Scheindlin, and Riman Barakat. Ido Amin for the wonderful, patient, and highly professional work on our video. Shanan Street and Hanin Majadli for the Hebrew and Arabic narration. Emily Muati and her office for the PR. Our funders, the Norwegian and Swiss governments, and the Heinrich Bell Foundation, who were brave enough and willing to at least look into alternatives to the common wisdom of separation. A special thanks to my chairman, Gershon Baskin. I took over from Gershon as Israeli co-director 3 years ago. He gave me his entire contact book, the key to the office, and said, call me if you need me. His handover of IPCRI, which he founded and managed for 25 years, was textbook as to how to hand over an organization one managed and founded. He has always been there when asked for, always with a wise insight, advice, support, whether we took it or not. His feedback on the book you hold has been one of my proudest achievements. And most importantly, the IPCRI team. My partner, Riman Barakat, Darin Amouri, our dedicated project manager, who's here, couldn't do it without you. Jalil Hishme, our financial manager, Max Shalcross, our administrative manager, all of IPCRI's interns, past and present, who supported, researched, edited, and participated in work on this project over the past year. I would like to now call upon Auni El-Mashni, the Palestinian coordinator of the 2 states and 1 homeland, to say a few words. You'll need to use your headsets for translation, as will be in Arabic. Thank you very much.